That was the most important part, that sense of being filled. It is real. She is a real presence. This opened up life to me again.
Hi, Mom. It's been
Whoa.
it's been about 2 years since your last experiences with MDMA. How has that led you to now, 2 years later, thinking about and actually participating in several ayahuasca ceremonies?
Well, wow, in the really broad picture, what's happened in the last 2 years is a total turnaround from closing down, just closing down, accepting that life was closing down and ending mainly because of my age, because the role of caregiver has kept me pretty confined, and like it's a total, complete, utter turnaround that's happened from that acceptance of closing down to like awesome opening up, like a sense of awe that, yeah, that's probably the right word. I don't think I had any awe in my life. I had acceptance. Okay, this is how it is. I'll make the best of it and I'm doing okay. To, oh my goodness. Wow, life is starting all over. It's a different life. It's a new life. It's a huge beginning. It's an opening. And every year life opens up more. And of course, then along came ayahuasca, which just totally opened up life. Yeah, that's the feel. That's the overall feeling.
Okay, so just step back a little bit. Last time we spoke, behind you was the urban sprawl of Toronto, downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
Where are you right now and why?
Well, that's part of the incredible, total new life. That was really, I was in an apartment overlooking the city, quite a beautiful view of the city at night, um, but that was life, pretty well fixed. To look around me now. I'm now living on Salt Spring Island, an island off the coast of British Columbia. I'm in the middle of a forest and a fruit orchard, and uh, I'm in the middle of growth. When I think about it, total growth, and I'm part of that growth. So I moved. I left that after 87 years. I left that urban, concrete place, um, just left it and my community, and here I am, whole new growthful world.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic, but it feels very natural. It doesn't feel like a break, or you know, it was so easy to move into this opening world, opening life. It was easy. I don't know why, but it was easy. Yeah. Of course, I had lots of support to do it, family support. I was moving closer into the bosom of my family after living apart from that all my life, including my childhood.
Right.
My adult life, I was totally on my own. Now I'm not on my own at all. Yeah.
So you're living with Jeff, the other son, and
Yep.
he's
And
helping. So
Annika and my granddaughter's close by, who comes and goes. She's just left after being here for 3 days, and
good.
but that's part of this fully living openly now. I'm feels more natural. to be in a family setting.
And the family's taken a load off of some of the caregiving.
Huge. I'm not caregiving alone anymore at all. At all. I can come and go. There's always someone here to take my place. I still do the most of it, but I'm aware I don't have to.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so not many 87-year-olds take their first step into the world of ayahuasca. Tell me how that was for you and how did that unfold?
It seemed to be the natural to grow into that um, agreement from starting with the MDMA and the psilocybin. And when I was doing that, I never thought I would do ayahuasca. In fact, I asked you, and you said, no, you don't really need to. You're doing fine. And then 2 years later, I knew I just really, really wanted to do it. Lots of curiosity that I'd opened up enough that now I was ready for that big opening. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
How did,
I was more. I had some nervousness, not fear, but definitely nervousness because you hear all the awful stories about purging and entities and dark stuff, and so I had some fear. But again, you were there. I wouldn't ever even have attempted it at all, except you were there the whole time. So that, again, that's made the difference for my journey. You've been that pillar that's been there through all of these experiences. And even when I'm here, you're still that pillar that is I'm very conscious of. Yeah.
yeah. I should share a little bit about just before we get into your side of the story, but I was there just beside you. And
Yes.
um, I remember the beginning of the ceremony. It was done in a nice quiet setting with just a few good friends around and a couple of assisting shamans. Um, and I remember drinking the cup and lying there beside you. You were sitting in a chair, and I was on the ground on a mat beside you. And I started going very, very deep, very, very quickly within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And going, oh boy. And I started going into the different ayahuasca spaces and different environments and saying hello to different entities. And I almost forgot you were there. And then after a little while, something inside reminded me, hey, check on your mother. And so I reached up with my hand and I grabbed your hand. I said, how are you doing? And you said, nothing. I'm not feeling anything. There's nothing happening at all. And I went, it's okay, Mom. It's pretty deep. Maybe you don't need to do it tonight. Maybe it'll come another night or another time. It's okay. It's pretty powerful. Just sit with it for a bit. Maybe you need to relax into it. And then I went deeper and deeper, and I started seeing all this environmental destruction and damage going on in Waitikabuli Dominica and the different forces trying to eat her up, and it was pretty
Wow.
intense.
Yeah.
And I thought, thank goodness Mom isn't seeing this right now. And then I reached over and grabbed for your hand again, and you said, "Not feeling a thing. I want some more." And I said, no, no, I think you're okay. You don't want to be here. And then you take it from there because then you said, I want more, and you asked for more. So what happened from there?
And the more at that point, um, I was aware of feeling blissful and kind of dreamy, but I wanted something much more than that. So I asked for more. I did a third drink,
And then what happened?
and then it all began. Well, actually, what happened at that point, uh, Adele came over, the medicine woman, and she said, I'm going to sing to you, and that'll help the medicine bloom.
Mhm.
And she started singing to me or chanting, I don't know what you call it. Um, But oh my gosh, that sound went right inside. And then I just bloomed. The medicine bloomed. Just bloomed. That's the perfect word. Yeah. And and so I knew that the difference between this psychedelic with ayahuasca and the other gentle MDMA and psilocybin, this is a whole different thing. This is a presence. Suddenly, there's a presence there. Entity isn't quite. There's a presence. Like, yeah. So I felt her presence. Um, but then, very suddenly, that the thing I'd been most worried about was the purging. I've been so worried about that, but I had it just took over. Usually, if I start to feel sick or nauseous, I can usually control it, force of will. I just gave into this awful, and I, people around me, the people that were there sharing the ceremony ahead of time, had said, "Purging's no big deal. It happens. Yeah, I purge usually," and they minimized. And for them, for me, it was huge. And I remember saying, "Tim, help! This is terrible. Help! This is awful." Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember at that moment thinking, I was just coming out the other side and you were just going in. And I remember thinking, oh no, what have I done with my mother? My brothers are going to be so upset. What have I done? She's going to hate me and hate this and hate everything. And oh no, what's happening? And
Uh,
guilt. And
yeah.
then you go ahead. Then what happened for you?
Well, I was aware of how powerful it was. The purging was taking over. It was like I'd never felt this sick. I don't ever remember feeling this sick. I remember thinking that, but I don't think I had any fear because you were right there, and I'm immediately. I don't know how quickly they came, but also uh, the two medicine women, Adela Vasanti, were right there singing to me, and you were saying to me, you say, because we've talked about this, that I have this place of love that I can always go to when I'm stressed, and you said, "Go to your love place, go to your love," and I couldn't find it. And so I just gave over to it. The music kept going, and you kept holding my shoulders, and and eventually and then I retched and retched, but dry heaves, nothing came up. Everybody had a pail. I thought that was bizarre, but there I held my pail in front of me, but and I retched, but nothing happened. And eventually everything settled down and my body was peaceful, and then I was in a quiet place of bliss. Yeah, it was lovely. And then I became aware of she's a female in my mind, in my experience. I became aware of her, this presence. She had a big, sort of fancy urn with a lovely curved pouring spout on it. And she was just pouring this liquid into me. And just she kept pouring and pouring, and I kept filling up and filling up and filling up. Um, and then I felt like I was full. And I remember thinking, I got a lot to give now. I've got a lot to give. And I think at that point you again came by and touched me, and I said, "Tim, I've got lots to give to you." And it was such a great feeling that I think about it now, but I didn't think then. But now thinking about it, to feel at this stage of my life, I still have a lot to give to you and to my family. And that was a wonderful feeling of being full. I know it's love, but it's beyond love. I'm filled up with love that I'll have for the rest of my life to share and give and be with. And yeah, that was that first ceremony. That was the most important part. Was that sense of being filled, and I've got it to take forward into the rest of my life. And I still have that feeling. I still have that feeling. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I can still see her pouring from this beautiful urn and filling my body, and I can feel my body's full, my heart's full.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's wow. What a lovely thing to have. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see it as something that still exists in your world now in a parallel, or was it a dream, or do you feel it was there all the time?
It's
Or
another dimension of reality. It is real. She is a real presence. And even now, she comes to me, or she's always with me, but every once in a while, I tune into her maybe, or she tunes into me and gives me sometimes just a one-liner of advice. Don't do that. Or do this. Or here's what that means. That's happened about 4 or 5 times since I've left the ceremonies. And here, it's interesting. And I know it's her. Immediately know it's her, and I pay attention to it. When my head says to me, don't do this, I don't pay attention to it. But when I know it's her, and it's usually do this, is what she's usually telling me, I do it. I don't question it. Yeah.
And last on your MDMA sessions, last interview, you talked about how you were able to process your mother and deal with some of the pain caused from that relationship. And then this time you were hesitant to visit your father, but tell me what happened when you wanted to go there.
So, I wanted to talk to my dad, but I had such a dark, painful memory, therapy focused around my mother. And I just didn't want to find out that it was all dark around my father, too. That I had very, very little memory of anything about my father. And I was so afraid if I went there with ayahuasca, I'd encounter another big dark shadow in my childhood, and I didn't want to. So I was really ambiguous about my intention. Would I deliberately ask to meet my father, or would I not? So in the end, I still didn't know what to do, whether I would do it. I was afraid. I didn't want another dark period. I dealt with my mother. I feel complete there. I didn't want to open another big dark area. And so I mentioned that to Adele, that I was really thinking about it but not wanting to. And she said, well, just stay ambiguous. Go into the ceremony. In your intentions, just say you're ambiguous. You don't know if you're ready or want to, or that's where you'll go. And just, let ayahuasca, grandmother, know that you're ambiguous, and just put that out there. And so that's what I did. And within 10 minutes of taking the medicine, there was my father. Just this lovely, smiling, he was just there. You're not talking, he didn't talk at all. It was just there. And every once in a while, my mother would start to come in. I'd see her and I'd say, no, I don't want you here. And she was gone. And then just my father was steady and constant. And then I began this amazing, it was so fabulous. It was almost a game of show and tell. And the first thing I showed him was basically my heart, but me. Look how full I am. Look, I'm all filled up. Because when he knew me, I was pretty empty. Look, and he just smiled. And then the next thing I showed him was Sky. Look, and there was Sky standing fairly tall in her beautiful body and her lovely face and her amazing brain. And I said, look what we've got, Dad. Look. It was so great. And then I showed him you, and look. And I showed him the center, the retreat center, the amazings. But it was all, look, Dad, look. He's still not saying a word, just looking. Oh, it was so great. Mm. And I continued to show him around. I showed him all the things. Show and tell was really, and then what happened, he's kind of above me, beside me, smiling. And then this thing, like a golden light started coming, a line came through him, and then it came right through me. And then I followed the line and it went right through you. And then I followed the line even further still, and there was Sky. And I turned to my dad and I said, this is from you. It was so nice to acknowledge to him that we all came from him. And I was able to tell him with gratitude, because he, as it turns out, he was the constant in my life that really helped me survive. And it was so nice to be able to show him gratitude, and that I acknowledged we all came from him. Somehow he was up at the top of a kind of a tower, and he's looking, and I'm down here and he's up there, and I'm saying to him, I have to tell you that I didn't keep our secret. And I need to let you know that I've been telling our secret to people. And I want to know how you feel about that. And our secret was what was happening in our house between my mother and I. And it was pretty bad. And my dad was part of keeping it secret. My dad and I, he knew what was happening, but he kept the secret with me. And what he answered me, and suddenly I understood, yeah, it was good that we kept it secret. He said, first of all, he said, I actually don't want you to talk about the secret, but I understand how important it is for you to talk about what happened for you and your mother, but I wish it was still a secret. That's where he started. But then he said, and so I said, why? Why did we keep it secret? Why didn't we tell anybody? We didn't even tell my aunt, who I really liked. We didn't tell anybody what was happening in our house. And he said, if we had told people what was happening, if we hadn't kept it a secret, then you wouldn't have that second life that you had. And I realized I had two lives. I had one life in the house, and as soon as I went outside the door of the house, I had a good life. I loved school. I had friends. I was very successful at school. I was on all the sports teams. I had relationships with the neighbors. and then I go in the house and my other life existed. And he said, if that secret was out, then you would be a victim out there instead of that happy person you were. So I'm not quite, but it made sense to me, made a lot of sense. And I said, okay, now I know why we kept the secret. And I said, but I am telling people now. And I went into therapy. I've told close friends. I've told my family what my childhood was like. And I haven't kept the secret. And it would be really bad for me to keep it because yeah. Anyway, for the rest of the night, oh, and that was the only time my father talked, was when he was up here in this kind of tower. Then for the rest of the night, I just gloried in memory after memory after memory of things that I'd done with my father that I'd totally forgotten.
Mm.
And it was fun to write them down in my journal, all the things that I did with my father that were just great. And to finally acknowledge, hey, that's what kept me functioning as healthily as I was. Yeah. But it was fun to come, and now I've still got all those memories. They're still with me. They were gone. I didn't have any of them, but now they're with me. I've got them. All
Mm.
the things we did together, just the two of us.
You wrote them
Yeah.
down.
I wrote them down, yeah. And I know there's even more than I wrote, but I still have them. I realize what a wonderful, steady, kind, solid presence. He was always there. I appreciate his amazing role in my life.
Like I
So
guess.
that was ayahuasca for me to make that kind of understanding possible.
Mm.
Yeah.
You see it as a tool that other people in the later chapters of their life could work with in order to feel more comfortable with their life.
I do, but I'm aware that my situation is rather unique. To come to this at this stage of life, I have the security that it's within my family. It's with you who have been there a long time and know all about it and are a guide. And I just turn myself over and trust to you. I wish everybody, yes, it'd be wonderful if everybody, it's that utopia. If
Mhm.
everyone understood this bigger concept of living
Mm.
that only comes through these kinds of plant medicine experiences that finally puts us in touch with that dimension of living that we're cut off from, and I'm not cut off from it anymore. It's a great way to face the end of my life with this much bigger understanding of life. I know I'm also, well, I'm super in touch with the collapsing world, the horror, the suffering that is going on at an accelerated rate. And I'm not in any denial of that. And I do feel that pain all the time. But it's in the view, but the view is so much bigger now than that reality, which is, this is real too. It's just as real as this awful. This is real. So yeah. And I guess what I get filled with from the very first, I take into that. I can take I can take it into that collapsing environment world. I can go into it um, with more to share, more able to just be there. I don't know. I haven't thought this through, but I'm feeling that now. Yeah.
No, you're articulating it. It's beyond words, but yeah, especially for people in the collapse aware community, so much anger and frustration and sometimes lashing out happens. And yet, often with these experiences, that anger and lashing out becomes less necessary.
And
And
you find better ways of interacting
mhm,
with the reality of what's happening. Yeah. But
mhm.
there are a lot of people in the deep adaptation connections that are also very familiar with the world of psychedelics. It's also a strength for a lot of people in this. Yeah, when I talk about it among my DA community friends, there's always several that have been there, are doing it, understand, want to hear more. I've never been shut down.
Yeah, it's interesting. In our experience, it's becoming more so that way. At the beginning, it was very shut down.
Yeah.
Like say 5, 6 years ago, people were just like, no, 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 that's frivolous spirituality.
I was part of that. How
Mhm.
come I don't know, but I was definitely there. I would say, oh, it's just, I would poo poo it, not see it as a valid experience. I
Mhm.
was there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I'd never experienced it. So it's like,
Well,
if you
exactly.
don't know, don't knock it.
As Terence McKenna once said, you go through your whole life without an orgasm, and you'd still have a pretty full life, but you'd miss out a whole dimension of creation and pleasure and understanding
Yeah,
our.
but try to explain it to somebody that's never had it. Not possible. Not to do it not adequately. Yeah.
Not to say this experience is equivalent, but it's a human experience.
Yes, another, yeah.
Is
No,
denied.
this is very different. This is opening up life that's always been here, but it's opening up life. Yeah. Further and bigger than you ever dreamed it could be.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
Mhm.
through this, I mean, headwise, I know we're connected to the plants and they need our carbon dioxide and we need their oxygen. But there, my body and my bloodstream and my energy, and it really feels the connection with this everywhere I look. I know we are connected, and that came through this awareness of the bigger life or the wholer life or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I often use the vocabulary of quantum mechanics as an entanglement, that our
Yep.
consciousness is entangled, and uh, that
Yeah.
makes more sense to me now than just thinking
Yeah.
of electromagnetism and chemicals and oxygen. But there's also a deeper entanglement that
I
we.
mean, I always
Mhm,
appreciated the natural world,
mhm,
but now I'm part of the natural world. But I'm also appreciating it in ways I never have before. Now I'm living in it,
mhm.
and that was part of having to leave the city without a second thought. Yep, I'm leaving.
Mhm.
Yeah. This isn't my place. My place is closer to the earth. Yeah. This was separating me, like the concrete jungle. For me, I'm not saying everybody lots of people in the city are just as aware as me. They've had other ways of achieving that awareness. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's very helpful. This is one other thing I wanted to ask you too. Who would you be right now if you never had these experiences, these introduction to MDMA or the plant medicine? How do you think you'd
It
be?
would be half of who I am now.
Hmm.
I would have stopped growing, learning. I would be exactly the same, um, like half of me, where whoever I was back then. I mean, there was some growing in order to get me to the point of doing the MDMA, but that was because of exposure to you. And where would I be if yeah. And I'd probably be pretty depressed. Um, quick to anger, pretty well given up on life. Why keep going? I've finished. I've done everything that, I've had my life. It's time to quit. Or please let it end. I've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I'd be. This opened up life to me again.
That's
And I
interesting.
think where I was is pretty normal for people in their 80s. It was pretty well, okay, slow down, stop, narrow down, coming to the end. I know I'm coming to the end of my life. Absolutely. I'm not pretending I'm not. That I think part of the whole purpose of the focus, the aim of all of these experiences is to make these final years valuable as opposed to putting in time. I think that's really been my focus. And right now, every minute is super valuable. And yeah. Of course, then I went through that experience with the family, the very small ceremony. For me, that was all about my dealing with leaving you guys and my need to think that I've left you with something valuable. But of course, I wanted to avoid the pain and of saying goodbye. But I went all through that pain, and it was just a measure of how deeply we love each other. That was quite a wonderful experience. Yeah, and at the end of that, remember, I had the vision of I would suddenly after being aware of what I was giving to you. Mostly, I need to know that Sky has something to face, what she's going to face. That was all complete. I felt good, lots of crying, and then lots of happiness. And then that bridge opened up in front of me, and I know it was the bridge to my death. And I stood up, and in my mind, I don't think I stood up with my body, I'm not sure, and put my arms out, and I just said, I'm ready. And that was a love. I'm ready. I'm not going to die tomorrow. I don't want to die tomorrow. I don't want to ever die, but I'm ready.
Mm.
Yeah, that was a lovely experience to know that I'm ready. I'm doing exactly what the best thing I could possibly do with my last few years. Yeah.
Which is why you're going to be around till at least 97, 98.
And, well, don't count on it. Whatever is it'll unfold, and whatever it is, we'll deal with it. Yeah, because of what we have.